So you saw the black shadow on the screen at times. That's because his stepdaughter, the one who called 911, she's running around the yard as well. I think we heard him on the ground say, "Get your butt back in the house," as he's being handcuffed. And then, "Oh, it's kind of uncomfortable. Can you get me up?" And no, nothing's wrong. I'm a little uncomfortable. Now the allegation is he just shot and killed 3 little boys. His 3 little boys. What's going on here? Take a look at the charges now. So he's facing aggravated murder, 9 counts, kidnapping, 8 counts, felonious assault, 4 counts. His bond being held at $20 million. So he'll be locked up until his trial. But you know, through the years, one thing I've noticed here, and I bring it up a lot, in cases where children are murdered by a stranger, they tend to end up the killers when they're convicted on death row. Yet when it's their own parents, they get a pass. They get a pass. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Makes no sense to me. Children don't trust and rely upon strangers for anything. They trust and rely upon their parents for everything. Everything. And to take the life of your own child that way, it's like there's always an excuse. There's always some excuse. Like, oh, you know, some mitigating. What? Why? Why? So I really have just one question tonight. If he's convicted, I understand, everyone's presumed innocent. They have a trial. But if he's convicted, is there any reason why this man should not get the death penalty? Let's bring in our think tank. Join us tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. Also with us in Phoenix, Arizona, criminal defense attorney, the lawyer who represented Jodi Arias. Trust me, hates her more than you do. Kirk Nurmi is with us. And in Denver, Colorado, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor Eric Faddis is with us. Thank you, everyone. Eklund, is there any reason? I was looking all over. I couldn't find one.
No one sane kills one child, especially all 3. I think mental health is a crisis in America, and we are seeing this now. I am curious to see what he has, because nobody is ever that calm. And then he was able to talk with his stepdaughter almost like nothing happened. So
was he talking with her, or was he kind of yelling at her and continuing the verbal assault like his neighbor is talking about?
He was being a dad, and that was weird. I think the voices may have stopped, and he was able to be clear-headed and give instructions, but there's no one sane, no one normal does that. So I'm curious to see his background, how he grew up and what led to this. Because regardless of what, justice is trying to figure out what happened, why it happened, and how we can prevent it from happening again.
Kirk Nurmi, your thoughts tonight?
Well, you know, Vinny, there's nothing that singles this guy out from what I consider my personal moral imperative, and what a lot of people in this country hold, is that, you know, I'm against the death penalty. Killing is wrong, and that doesn't shift the moral imperative, whether it's a stranger or a caregiver, step-parent, parent, what have you, that is doing it. I don't think that distinction matters really to me, because I'm against the death penalty. And the other argument I would make, Vinny, when we think about this, when we think about all the venom in this case, also consider that the death penalty for someone like this man could be an easy way out. He's going to get a chance to pass from this world sooner if he's on death row, but rather if he's locked there in jail, he's going to have to deal with the consequences of what he did every single day for year after year, day after day, knowing there's no hope that he's ever going to see the light of day.
Eric Faddis, somehow, some way through the years, I've noticed a pattern, right? And it's not every single case, but it is. If you are a stranger, if some stranger showed up at this house and did what the father did, it's no doubt where that person is ending up. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. If they convict him, he's going to death row. But in some strange twist, sometimes it's the jury, sometimes it's the judge, sometimes it's the prosecutor in the way they charge the case. But it seems that parents who literally murder their children seem to get a pass.
Yeah, Vinny, that's an asinine distinction to me. I mean, what is it suggesting, that these parents somehow have more of a right to take the life of their own child than a stranger does? I think that is just reprehensible. And in looking at this case, my gosh, it's just chilling. It's nauseating, and it's a monstrous act. And some states have decided that monstrous acts deserve the most severe punishment that can be imposed, which is death. And so I'll be interested to see if that's the way Ohio goes in this case.
So, Kirk, I want to get back to you. And I understand, right? Your professional life, you fought the death penalty. You were an expert in these trials, and you defended killers and prevented them from getting on death row. And I understand that, and I know a lot of people believe that. But when it's the law, and some people are going to get it, what are your thoughts about the way our system, and it's in different ways, sometimes it's the prosecutor, sometimes it's the judge, sometimes it's the jury, seems to give more of a pass to parents than strangers when it comes to killing our children?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Eric, what he just said about that distinction. Really, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why certain jurors or prosecutors would have more or be less inclined to impose death upon someone because it's their own children versus a stranger. I don't understand that distinction at all. For me, the moral imperative is, against killing is pretty clear, no matter who it is. So ultimately, that's a distinction that escapes me, and is one, like Eric said, makes no sense whatsoever.
Go ahead, Eklund.
I think it does. If we have heat of passion, voluntary manslaughter, heat of passion, I can get something reduced if it's a heat of passion. What other person that can strike up a passion in anybody but your family? So it does make more sense that if we have more.
But Eklund, heat of passion is more like, and
no,
you know,
but
you walk
it's
in.
just emotional.
Yeah, the classic case, just for the folks at home, the classic case that we all learned in law school is a guy comes home from work, opens the door, his wife's in bed with another man.
His wife.
And then he shoots everybody, kills him, and we say that's heat of passion, right? That's what we say.
His wife. It is his wife who's in bed. It's not two strangers in his bed. It is his wife, his family member.
Right,
and we
but
reduce
these kids aren't doing anything. They're just being children.
Because it's his wife. So then with regards to children, it's no different. We have to look at it more. There's nobody, no one sane is going to snuff out their own children. There is something else that is bubbling up in there that needs to be addressed. So I think that, yes, there's a distinction because we have more of a history. And no, there's no rationale behind murdering anybody, especially your own children. But it is something so outside of standards that we need to look at it.
I want you to take a listen to the neighbor, because it was pretty enlightening, because he's right next door and he got a flavor for what was going on in that house and his thoughts about this father.
He was an asshole.
Richard Kincannon tells me Chad Dorman had a temper. He told me he witnessed him often treating his wife and kids poorly.
You felt like he was just angry, generally speaking.
He was every day. Heard him. There wasn't a day he didn't yell at his wife and kids out there.
What would he yell?
All kinds of shit. He was just angry, yelling at her all the time, treating her like.
So when you look at that house now, what do you see?
You honestly want to know?
Yeah, I do.
I still see the babies sitting in the yard, laying in the yard. One was right there by the tree, right by the road, not even 20 feet from the road right there is where that dude laid him. Laid the one up there right beside that silver truck to the left of the tire, about 5 foot. That's all I see every time I come out here. That's why I try to look at that, focus on that.
A tent now covers a memorial of candles, cars, and cuddle toys. Kincannon tells me he's struggled to eat or sleep since the murders. He watched Chad Dorman cry at his arraignment and had no compassion for him whatsoever.
He knew what he was doing. He planned it. It was premeditated. He shouldn't have a bond. He should never see daylight again, ever in his life. And I think they should execute him the same way the same way he did his sons is the way he needs to go out.
Dorman's due back in court on June 26th. We will be there. Tanya O'Rourke, WCPO 9 News.
Our thanks to WCPO. Anything there, Eklund, change your mind?
No, I've represented batterers. I've represented victims that have hurt their batterers. I've represented the children of the batterers. I've represented. It's so much deeper and so much entwined, and it's different. Like my issue. This is my issue. My issue is that we have a history of that man being volatile towards their children, and CPS didn't pick them up. We have a history. We probably have witness accounts that this is not the first time he has yelled, that he has been beating his wife, that he has been beating his child. And it isn't until all three are dead that we have police presence. That is my issue with this case.
All right, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Eric Faddis staying with us the whole hour. Up next. While Bill Zelensky, accused of killing his girlfriend's son, back on the witness stand today on cross-examination, did his story fall apart?
Did you and April ever have any kids?
No, just the animals.
Were the animals like your kids?
Yeah, exactly. I had a troop of ringtail lemurs for over 20 years, and they're a small primate from Madagascar, like a monkey, and they're very affectionate. And they'd sit on my shoulder, and they'd sit on my lap, and I'd pet them and feed them treats, and yeah, they were like my kids.
They're not exactly like children, but I get it. But that's Wild Bill Zelensky. He's charged with murder, shooting and killing his girlfriend's son. And they're talking about how he and his wife never had children. Wild Bill didn't have children, but he did have a throuple going on in the relationship with his girlfriend and his wife all at the same time. I don't think the wife was necessarily into it, but she went along with it. But now he's charged with murdering his girlfriend's son. Now, that little piece of testimony we showed you right there seemed to impress our think tank last night. Take a listen.
I will say, when I watch the testimony of these three, what strikes me, and I wonder if it's striking the jury in the same way, is how Wild Bill is coming across as pretty cogent, articulate, and arguably compelling.
He has testified wonderfully. He comes across as likable. His love of animals, we may all laugh at it. His love of animals actually is working.
Endearing.
Right, it's endearing. And like, I saw the mugshot pictures and I'm like, wait, what? This guy he didn't sound like I thought he would sound like. I mean, it's his ball to drop at this point, and wow.
Wow, the reviews last night, that was from direct examination. So today was cross-examination. Let's take a look.
Now, you talked a lot yesterday about your law enforcement training. Are you a sworn law enforcement officer?
No, I'm not.
You talked about your training. Do you know what law enforcement privilege is?
Yes.
What is it?
Law enforcement officers have certain privileges in a line of duty that surpass that of non-sworn citizens.
You were last a law enforcement officer in 2005, so that was 18 years ago?
Sounds about right.
And so at the time of this, it was 16 to 17 years prior.
Correct.
My notes from your testimony that you responded to a domestic abuse related incident of once a week.
No, that's not correct.
correct.
Okay.
That's not what I testified to.
As a police officer, what did you do when you responded to a hostile suspect?
It depends on the situation. Everyone's fluid.
The fact that he was involved in a domestic led to your fear of Riley.
That was a factor, yes.
But in your career as a law enforcement officer, you responded to domestics, according to my notes, once a week.
Your notes are incorrect.
You are trained that you start with the lowest level of control, and deadly force is only used as a very last resort.
Yeah, I remember it's a force continuum. So it escalates and de-escalates, and it's fluid. That's correct.
Right, but you start with the least amount of force necessary. You just read the policy that it's the least amount of force necessary.
Correct.
You don't start with the gun pointed at someone.
I think we heard another officer testify that sometimes you can de-escalate and have your gun out and then not need it and put it back into its
After
holster.
you've tried all the other use of force techniques,
Well, like he said, you don't have to necessarily go through each one in order. Sometimes it jumps around on the continuum.
did you ever tell Officer Wasserman it was an accident?
No,
Did you ever tell Deputy Thorpe it was an accident?
no.
Did you ever tell Officer Shabilsky it was an accident?
I don't think I told anybody. I kept my right to remain silent.
So he wowed the think tank last night on Direct. Let's see what tonight's think tank thinks of Wild Bill. Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nermy, Eric Faddis with us. Kirk, the wow factor, is it there for you?
Yeah, I think we heard last night's commentary about Wild Bill, but I don't think we're seeing Wild Bill on the stand. We saw that in the mugshot with the hair and everything. But what we're now seeing is Bill Zielinski, retired police officer and animal-loving businessman. And that's why I think the testimony is coming across so powerful. Because what are we talking about here in this case? We've got a Ring camera, we've got all these other bits of evidence. We're talking about his law enforcement career and proper use of de-escalation techniques in a self-defense case between individuals that know each other. And it's a strange kind of dynamic. And I think on that playing field, Mr. Zielinski gets elevated even more, and the state is doing it for him, because now we're talking about whether he used proper de-escalation techniques, not whether or not he committed first-degree murder. And I think in that sense, he is really giving himself a fighting chance on a trial that I thought at one time was going to be a slam dunk for the state.
Yeah. Did he wow you, Eric?
I was rather underwhelmed by his performance on cross-examination there. And I certainly understand what Kirk's saying, but I'm wondering if his law enforcement might actually be a detriment to him. A lot of folks hold law enforcement to a higher standard. And a lot of folks think, police officers, of all people, should know when to use and not to use force, especially deadly force, and what the factors are to assess and to make, a split-second decision in that moment. I'm just wondering if the jury is going to hold him to a bit of a higher standard because he has that training and because there are other less lethal measures that he could have employed but didn't. And I'm just wondering if that's going to hurt him in all this.
Eklund, I have some video that Kirk mentioned, the ring cam video. I'll show it to you, and then you tell me your thoughts about the video versus the man on the stand.
You are me.
Eklund, what do you think?
I think all of that, law enforcement, all of it, all his testimony, irrelevant. Not relevant at all. Let me tell you why. He was not on law enforcement. He was not on a traffic stop. He was actually trying to get his lizard back. and he was trying to get his money back. That is where we meet him where he was. Where he was trying to be a bully and trying to get his pet back. That's who we have. But I will say this, the defense did a bang up job in prepping him, even making him look like, a detective, even with the old suit and the haircut. You gotta give it to him, because it'll just like pump fake the jury into like treating him like an officer. But he is not. All of that was irrelevant. I don't know how it came in. I would have made motions. I would have jumped up and down. But I can see why the defense used it.
Yeah, the one question that hasn't been answered, Kirk, and everyone's been dancing around, is why he is no longer a police officer.
That part.
Yeah, we don't know if that's something that was excluded or was irrelevant, or it was just.
I gotta think the
innocuous
jury's
and the
going to be
state isn't
wondering,
pursuing.
right? Don't you think the jury will be wondering? And what do you think they'll conclude? Or do you think they'll just dismiss it and say, well, we don't know, they didn't tell us?
Yeah, it's hard to say. You hate for the jury to kind of write the end of their own story with that if you're either side of it, especially the defense. Maybe they write a story that he did something bad and that's why he's off the force. You don't want that story to be written. But obviously, I guess it's going to be one of those things that will probably remain a mystery until after this trial is over.
All right, our coverage will continue. Up next. A man in Texas facing a potential death sentence is accused of murdering his lover and their toddler. We have a preview of this upcoming trial.
There was pounding on the door. Bang, bang, bang.
He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survived. Tonight, 10/9 Central on Court TV.
A teenager fatally shot.
The alleged motive, snakes and a crocodile stolen from the defendant.